I wanted to start off and find out from your understanding if it is as it seems that we have escaped the application as threatened by Donald Trump of tariffs on day one. Is that your understanding?
It looks like we have escaped it on day one, but I don't think we want to take it for granted. There's still obviously irritants in the relationship between Canada and the US. And I think this gives us an opportunity to address some of those. Clearly, border security, addressing the Mexican cartels, fentanyl, illegal migrants. That's going to be something that we have to demonstrate that we're taking serious action on. And I think the other issue that keeps coming up is our NATO commitment. I think that it is perceived by the U.S. that we're free riding on their security and that we need to make sure that we're equal partners in that. And equal just means getting to the 2% NATO commitment. That's something that the premiers have been asking for some time. We were worried that if we didn't meet that commitment, it would begin to have repercussions on trade. We've managed to avoid that so far, but I think we have to get serious about both of those issues if that's going to be the permanent state.
Do you have a sense of what changed? Because I remember even after you came back last week from Mar-a-Lago, your impression was tariffs are coming. Not to say that we've escaped the application of them forever, but like in the last week, have you been sort of informed of any change in the discussion? Goldie Hatter was telling us he thinks there's kind of two camps. The Lutnick camp, the Miller camp have different messages, and one just seemed to resonate. Do you have a sense?
I can tell you the argument that I make. What I say is that our energy provides the Americans the opportunity to be energy dominant, which is what we know they want. They simply would not be able to export as much as they do right now without being able to have Canada's backfill. We provide cheap energy to the U.S., they upgrade it, they export it, and it also provides low cost of products to their consumers. And so I think you can make that argument for a whole range of products. You can make that argument on electricity. You can make that argument on critical minerals. You can make it on timber. You can make it on food. And if you're starting to address issues of tariffs, you have to address how it's going to impact the American consumer. I think that's probably the framework that they're coming to it now, and they have to be very thoughtful about it. So does it mean that we won't see tariffs at all? I don't know that, but it does mean that we have an opportunity to make our case. So I think we should be grateful for that.
Premier Smith, you spent a lot of time with American politicians over the past 2 days. Are you sensing, is there perceptible change that these U.S. tariffs could, in fact, affect American consumers? Are they recognizing that? Are they realizing that?
I think it's an inescapable fact. If you put a 25% tariff on oil and gas, it would we calculate in many states, especially those that are 100% reliant in their refineries on Canadian oil, it could increase the cost of gasoline by $1 a gallon. That would have a very serious impact on American consumers. And so I think that because the U.S. president has that joint objective of being able to be energy dominant at the same time as secure low energy prices for his own people, I think that we can make that argument. We can lead with that. But it goes further than that. If you look at the national security world that they're facing, they want to be able to support their friends and allies. We can help them do that. They know they have to have a supply of uranium. Right now, Kazakhstan and Russia are two of the big suppliers, but so is Saskatchewan. Far better to get it from friends and allies in Canada than some of the hostile regimes of the world. And I think if we keep on making those kinds of arguments, we're going to be able to have a breakthrough with this presidency.
You said in your statement that you released just before this that and correct me if I'm wrong, I read it very quickly, but that we should be refraining from talking about countermeasures or possible retaliatory tariffs. What evidence do you have that will work, since that has been what's been talked about the past few weeks, and it appears we've escaped the immediate application of these tariffs?
I just think that we have to be realistic about the fact that we're an economy 1/10 the size of the Americans, and any trade dispute that we get into, if we ratchet it up, it's just going to be more and more painful for Canada. We're going to suffer more from that than the Americans are. And why can't we avoid that altogether? We can make a positive case for why it is that we benefit from this cross-border relationship. That's what I've been doing. And I think that if we continue to make those kinds of arguments, that we should be able to avoid any kind of application of tariffs.
Can't, though, two things be done at the same time? I think when Canadians hear you say, like, oh, don't talk about anything we could do in response, just talk about how good we could have it all together, it feels a little bit like advocating to just lie down and let them steamroll us. Can you understand Canadians who would want to see a little bit of a response from various governments?
I think you have to be your response has to be proportionate. My caution was, let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what the government does. And the fact that they have decided to take a closer look at it, that gives us the opportunity to make the case. And I just don't think you should threaten things that you're not prepared to do. Like, there's no chance that we will be cutting off energy exports to the U.S., so why threaten it? It doesn't make sense for us to have a Canadian tariff apply to Canadian goods with dollars going to Ottawa. So why threaten that? If you want to be able to
because
match,
it might work. With all due respect, and I take your point on
Oh,
the
yeah.
lack of logic, but I think I talked to people in other governments, even Scott Moe, who's an ally of yours on this, and everyone had migrated to a point where they were okay with the possibility of raising the specter if it accomplished something positive in the end.
Yeah,
They felt like you were working. Doug Ford, essentially communicated that you were working against the national interest by saying otherwise.
Well, you know what I didn't do? I didn't go out and say, let's stop selling car parts to America to get serious about the trade relationship. I didn't go out and say, let's stop selling aluminum from Quebec. And that's what I objected to. You can't pick on one particular province and one particular commodity. If we're having to take the kind of measures that everybody shares in equally, well, then I guess we have to. But the nice part is today we don't have to. Today we can have a positive conversation about how we maintain the nearly tariff-free relationship with the United States. And I hope we can continue on that front, because I don't like the divide and conquer approach that I've seen the Prime Minister take. I don't think that that's very helpful. The table that we normally have as a group of premiers is that when we do communiques, we make sure that everybody's comfortable with what's in it. And I made it pretty clear that picking on Alberta was just not going to be the way to achieve any kind of solution. And in fact, I think that using energy and saying that we're going to sell the Americans more is actually a far more powerful argument than saying we're going to sell them less, especially with their framework being one of energy dominance. And we know that we can make sure that they achieve that.
No tariffs today, but the question, as we've been asking, is how long will this last, right? And so, Premier Smith, how do you prepare? I mean, aside from making the argument that these tariffs could hurt Americans, how do you prepare for that if it were to happen? I mean, a country has to do something.
I'll tell you what I'm preparing for. I've said for now the last couple of years that we want to double our oil and gas production. We want to increase the amount of pipeline access to the United States. I've already started talking with all of our pipeline companies about how we might be able to put projects on the table to the incoming Secretary of the Interior and the incoming Secretary of Energy. And that's how I'm going to proceed. I'm going to say, we know what you want to accomplish. We're here to be able to help you, and hope that leading with that kind of relationship is going to benefit all of Canada. That's the approach I want to take.
Bigger picture, though, doesn't that just increase our dependence on this trading relationship and put us in an even more vulnerable spot moving forward?
Well, I would love to also talk with Quebec about how we might restart Energy East through their province. Would they be willing to do that? I'd like to start talking with British Columbia, how we might reactivate Northern Gateway. I mean, we have to make a choice here. We have to understand the reason we've become so dependent on the United States is that we haven't been engaging in those partnerships across the country. And I think we can do both. I think that we can continue to enhance our relationship with the United States, but then we have to have an honest conversation as Canadians about why we keep blocking each other's projects, why it is we keep on blocking some of the major projects that would allow us to sell the export products around the world that we know that the world needs. And so maybe this is a wake-up call for all of Canadians. Let's get rid of internal trade barriers. Let's stop fighting against these kind of nation-building projects, and then maybe we'll be able to diversify our markets.
Do you still want to be at the table with the other premiers having those conversations, given what's happened over the last week? Because I think their impressions otherwise.
Well, I'll be at the COF meeting that we're going to be having in Washington on February the 12th. I believe that we're going to be having regular meetings, and I hope it's going to be really constructive. I think this is a real opportunity for us to identify ways that we can work together. The Premier's table is actually a very positive table. We take a consensus approach on issues, and I think we're going to be able to find some good things to work together on.